to a Hope 1032 podcast.
The Hope Book Club with Katrina Roe and Natasha Moore, because life's just better with a book.
G'day, and thanks for pressing play on this bonus episode of the Hope Book Club podcast. I'm Katrina Roe. In this episode, I speak to Kathleen Basi, author of A Song for the Road, my favourite novel from this year. It's about a musician who is grieving the loss of her husband and 2 teenage children and sets off on a road trip across America. It might sound like a sad and depressing topic for a novel, but it's full of life and joy and learning, forgiveness, and making peace with the past. So I hope you'll enjoy my chat with Kathleen Basi. First, though, let's hear a little bit from the book, A Song for the Road.
Naturally, that was the moment the flowers arrived. "Excuse me, I'm looking for... Just find a place on the stairs," Miriam told the delivery guy, waving toward the bower around the altar. Actually, they're not for the funeral." He looked embarrassed. "I'm looking for Miriam Tedesco." The choir went abruptly silent, and Miriam knew. She didn't need to look. She could smell them. Mock orange and larkspur. The same arrangement Teo had presented her with 19 years ago on the way into the courthouse, and every anniversary and birthday since. How could she have forgotten? Talia had set up the auto delivery on her father's behalf, right in front of Miriam, at the dinner table 2 years ago last night. They'd all gotten such a laugh out of it. Becky, trim in her polyester suit, set her hymnal aside and went over to the delivery man. "I'll take those, thank you." She turned to Miriam, who stared at the clumps of rounded white blossoms, pierced by pink and blue and purple spears. "They're so pretty," said an alto who'd joined the choir only a few weeks ago. "Who are they from?" A moment of dead silence. Miriam didn't have the energy to explain the nuances. "Teo," she said. "They're from Teo." At the sound of her dead husband's name, silence fell. "But," the alto said, "yes, Teo's dead. My whole family is dead, I know." Miriam shoved her freak out into a deep dark corner of her mind she never visited during daylight hours, or at night if she could help it. But the niggling thought stuck its foot in the door, preventing her from slamming it shut. If she'd forgotten this, what else might be lurking on the calendar waiting to ambush her?
A Song for the Road by Kathleen Basi is a beautiful novel about love, forgiveness, and learning to live freely. 1 year after the death of her husband and teenagers, Miriam Tedesco is struggling to hold it together. When she receives a bunch of flowers from her dead husband on their wedding anniversary, she understandably unravels. She sets off on a musical pilgrimage with her husband's guitar, her daughter's cello, and her son's unfinished piano sonata to grieve her family and face up to her past choices. Kathleen Basi joins me on the line. Good morning, or in your case, good evening. Great.
Yes, good evening, but good morning to all of you.
Great to have you with us. This is an absolutely beautiful debut novel. I loved it. The first line of the book is a cracker. I want to read it. On her 38th birthday, Miriam Tedesco received flowers from a ghost. So how long has this story been haunting you, Kathleen, and what came first, the story or the opening line?
The story came first. I drafted it in 2016, and I'm in the United States, of course, so I tell everyone that I drafted it during one presidential election, and when I was revising it for publication, doing the last set of revisions, we were in another presidential election cycle, and there was a line in the book that I wrote that presidential politics was doing nothing for her existential crisis, and I thought it is still true, and it's been 4 years. But yeah, that opening line came to me, and I had to write a new scene to go around it. It was starting in a very different place.
Yeah, I loved it. As a real, we call them sizzling starts here at school. Yes. The idea of having a book where the main character has lost her whole family, it's pretty devastating. So where did that come from?
Well, I came at this, I had a dream where was standing in a beautiful place, looking at the place where my family had died. And it was at the end of a long journey. And that was all there was to that moment, except for the emotion. Like there was a whole bunch more to that dream. But the thing that I took away from it was that image and the emotion, which was hope. And I thought, nah, that's just weird. Like, how is that even possible? And I thought there's got to be a story in there to figure out how something that should have been a nightmare became a beautiful dream, a beautiful image.
No, that's quite powerful. And why did you decide to structure the story around a road trip? Because, even though it's a story about, I guess, grief and loss and dealing with the past, it all happens that she comes to terms with this while driving across the United States. Yeah, where did that come from?
Well, I think it was because I knew that in that image that it was the end of a long journey. And so I grew up taking long road trips. I live in the middle of the state of Missouri, which is more or less about 4 hours south and 2 hours west of Chicago, if anyone knows where that is. And so to get to either coast of the United States is a long, long drive. And my grandparents used to take us on these long 3-week driving vacations because he was a tool and die maker in the auto industry. And he would just take 3 weeks off because he didn't, he was an assembly line worker. He could. So we would take these long RV vacations. And so I think, that's not one of those things that you think about in your life, but the road trip was just sort of built into this is how the world works, my idea of the world.
Yeah, that's definitely true for me. I grew up in quite a remote area as well. So I really enjoyed that, especially reading the book in lockdown. It was great to do some vicarious travel. And you picked some pretty obscure places to include in your road trip as well. It wasn't just all the famous landmarks that we all know. So that was a really enjoyable part of it. But the real point of connection for me with Miriam, because most of us haven't lost our whole family, the really relatable part was the complex relationship that she has with her teenagers. She really loves them, but it's also a difficult relationship. What were you hoping to capture in Miriam's grief over her children?
Well, my overarching thought, because I have 4 children and they are now 16 down to 9, so they're pretty close together. And my second child has Down syndrome. So parenting and life is very intense. And I thought it was interesting that I was revising that this book went on submission during lockdown. I honestly thought it would not sell because who in the world would ever buy a story about losing your family when we're looking at COVID and being afraid of losing our families? But as this book has gone out into the world, it turns out that it has resonated really well with people because the whole thing that she is wrestling with on this trip is appreciating what she had in the moment and living in the moment. And that's what she realizes that she never did. And reader after reader after reader comes to me and says, I'm looking at my family in a whole new way. And that was kind of how I felt about it as well, because I'm an introvert and I like to have my space. And my kids have been all in my face for the last year and a half. And so to have that perspective, to recognize what a blessing it is to have these intense togetherness. I think we all struggle at times to really appreciate what we have. We're always looking to the next thing or feeling frustrated or stressed out. And it's good to have that sense of a check on reality, to realize that we're focusing on the minutia when the big picture is so beautiful. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Look, I mean, for me, I think that was what I loved reading it in lockdown was, it does make you really appreciate what you have in your own family and what a gift that is. So that was fantastic to read about. I mean, you, Kathleen, you're also a musical composer and a church musician, and your main character, she lives her life immersed in music. Was it a challenge to write about music without being able to actually write or play music to express the musical ideas in the book?
That's a good question. I think that There were times when I thought, oh, I should write this song. There's a point in there where she has a particular little melody that comes to her, and I thought I should write this song. But it came to the point where I realized I didn't really need to. It's kind of the same as when people ask, who do you think should play your characters if they make a movie of it? And these people have become real to me, so I can't answer that question because they're real people to me. I can't say, oh, somebody else should play them. And it feels kind of that way with the music as well, that the music did not have to be written by me in order to take on life. And frankly, if I had tried to write the music, I probably would have been a whole lot more detailed about the descriptions, and then everyone would have glazed over.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because we would have had no idea what you were talking about.
Right. I have a great critique group of fellow novelists who would read this and say, I don't know what you're talking about there. You need to back off of the music. And I'm like, I just did the tip of the iceberg there. And I would get like, really? Come on. And then they would say, no, way too much music. So I had to back off.
So what is the role of music in the story for you?
Well, the role of music for Miriam is the same as it is for me. It is sort of the most authentic self. It is where I'm able to feel most myself. And so for her, she is traveling across the country, and she doesn't necessarily set out with the intention of playing music at every place that she stops. It just sort of happens to her. Her first road trip stop is at the radio telescope in Green Bay, North Carolina, which really is out in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of the radio quiet zone, so there's no cell signal. And she goes out there not having any idea what she's getting into, and finds herself alone when she has been determinedly keeping herself from being alone for the past year. And suddenly she has nothing to distract her. And so what comes to her in that moment is music that was meaningful to her son. And so she begins to sing. So as she moves forward through the book, these moments of music allow her to connect with her children, to connect with her husband, to connect with the core of who she is. And then by doing that, she's able to get in touch with her emotions and recognize the things that are broken in her and heal them.
The other thing about Miriam that really stands out is she's a Catholic music director, and I love the way her faith just comes out so naturally in the story without it being sort of a religious book as such. Can you just share with us your thoughts about portraying a character with an authentic faith?
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons that I was so interested in talking to you, because I feel that we have a tendency in modern culture there's like three types of characters. There's the non-religious, and there's the I'm religious and I'm a hypocrite, like I'm actually a horrible human being, but I claim religion. Well, really, those are really the two. But we don't really get people who are deeply flawed and authentic and just really trying to do their best and falling down as they go. This was a very frightening book in many ways to write, because I knew that I was straddling a crack between Christian fiction and secular fiction. I knew I wanted to write secular fiction. I did not want to pigeonhole myself into a niche market. I wanted to reach everyone. But I also knew that simply having a character of faith who talks about it ever was going to be a very, very tricky balance. But I feel like we need those examples out there of people who like sometimes don't use all the right language and who have made really big mistakes in the past and who are still sitting on secrets based on those mistakes and who have really just not lived the faith the way that they would want to, but they still are trying. And to just have that relatability and that authenticity, I think, is something that we really need in the modern world. And my hope is that it can actually become soft evangelization, I guess, is what I would say, that it's something where people can feel like, oh, this is not like all characters of faith in fiction don't have to be crazies or hypocrites or, closet monsters. That you can have a person who's just ordinary and flawed and doing the best they can and not always succeeding.
Yeah, I really appreciated that about her character, that in spite of her checkered past and her struggles, her faith is very authentic, but it is also very strong. Like it's a big part of who she is. And when I read it, I thought, I don't think you could get a book like this published in Australia. I think that publishers in Australia are very resistant to any kind of religion or faith, unless it's from a multicultural kind of perspective, maybe. But for me, it was really refreshing to read that. So what feeling do you mentioned hope at the beginning of our conversation. What feeling do you want to leave your readers with when they put this book down?
I would hope that people would take away a feeling of beauty and of the larger blessing that is life. That's really what it boils down to. The idea that everything is bounty and everything is goodness, and we can find that our job is just to navigate the dark threads that go through that, and to keep our eyes on the bigger one.
And what's next? Do you have another novel itching to get out?
I do. I have a novel in process. It's set in California wine country, and it involves a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law trying to reopen their winery, their family business, after the man that they share in common, the son and the son/husband, sort of spectacularly self-destructed and burned it to the ground. So they're trying to cope with loss and rebuild and figure out how to move on.
Wow. Have you got a sizzling start for that one too?
No, I don't have a sizzling start for that one yet. We have to cross our fingers and hope that it comes to me in time.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the chat this morning. It's been great to catch up with you. I really genuinely loved your book for anyone listening. If you want to feel better about life, this is a beautiful journey. So thank you so much. It's been great catching up with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's Kathleen Basi. Her novel is called A Song for the Road. You can find Kathleen at kathleenbasi.com.
Hope 1032. Thanks for listening.